Closure. They say it's the kind thing to do, the mature thing, the respectful ending. But Machiavelli, if he could see how people beg for final conversations, last words, clean exits, would smile. Because he knew the brutal truth. Closure is not resolution. It is surrender. The moment you give someone closure, you give them freedom. And when they're free, you lose your leverage. You give them answers, now they don't need you. You give them peace, now they can walk away. You give them the end, and you kill your invisible power over their mind. That's not strength, that's surrender disguised as civility. Machiavelli didn't play by emotional rules. He didn't aim to heal wounds. He aimed to leave them open, just wide enough to keep you looking over your shoulder. This is not cruelty. This is psychological design. Because if you want to maintain power, dominance, or control, especially over those who walked away, never give them closure. Let's begin. Closure ends the narrative, and you want them trapped inside it. Human beings live in stories, and the most addictive story of all is the one that has no ending. If you cut them off without explanation, if you vanish at your peak moment, if you disappear while they're still full of questions, they won't forget you. They'll obsess. Why did they leave? What did I do wrong? Was any of it real? That loop becomes a prison. Every memory plays louder. Every silence grows heavier. This is what Machiavelli would call emotional inertia. You never gave them a clear path forward, so their mind circles back to you. Closure breaks the loop, but denial of closure traps them inside it. They don't move on. They orbit you. Unfinished conversations keep you alive in their head. When someone thinks they understand you, they stop chasing. When they think they've figured it out, they let go. But when you leave them mid-sentence, mid-conflict, mid-connection, you become unresolved data, and the mind hates unresolved data. This is why ghosting, cutting off, or going silent at the height of emotional connection is so effective. It creates an emotional debt that can't be paid off. They will revisit everything you said, replay every message, invent reasons, project closure onto you because they need it to breathe. Machiavelli would say, when you no longer control their actions, control their focus. And focus is controlled not with presence, but with absence at the perfect time. Giving closure is a gift, and you should never give power to the discarded. You wouldn't give your enemy money after the battle. You wouldn't help a rival sharpen their sword. So why would you help someone who disrespected you understand you? Closure is not being the bigger person. It's rewarding someone who no longer deserves answers. Machiavelli believed in utility first. If someone no longer serves your goals, they do not get emotional clarity. They do not get healing. They do not get to walk away clean. You leave them confused, off balance, needing what you no longer provide. That is leverage. And in a game of power, leverage is more important than legacy. Closure strengthens them. Uncertainty keeps them soft. A person with closure walks tall. A person without it walks carefully. If you give them understanding, they recover. They find peace. They rebuild. But if you disappear with silence, or worse, calculated distance, they doubt everything. And that doubt breaks their internal compass. Am I wrong? Were they right? What did I miss? Now they can't trust their judgment. They hesitate in future decisions. They feel smaller, while you remain untouched. Machiavelli didn't seek vengeance. He sought long-term psychological dominance. And the easiest way to install that? Exit without explanation. Not out of fear, out of design. Closure kills curiosity, and curiosity is how you stay relevant. People don't remember those who gave them everything. They remember those who left something missing. When you walk away with no final message, when you leave their assumptions unanswered, when you deny them the truth they think they deserve, you create mystique. They'll wonder, were they protecting me? Were they manipulating me? Did they actually care? And in that wondering, they keep you alive. They stalk your silence. They feed your myth. This is how you stay powerful long after you're gone. Closure makes you fade. No closure makes you a myth. Their need for closure becomes your leverage. Here's the most Machiavellian part. If you deny closure and they beg for it, now you control the terms. They come back, humbled. They ask, cautiously. They open the door, you decide if you walk through it. And now, the power dynamic is reversed. They need answers. You don't need anything. You can say nothing, say less, say just enough to make them chase more. You can make them earn every word. And in doing so, you reassert dominance without ever appearing cruel. Machiavelli didn't believe in emotional generosity. He believed in timed scarcity, especially when someone had already shown their true colors. Closure is comfort, but discomfort is leverage. The world will call this cold. They'll say you're heartless, immature, toxic. Let them. Because most people confuse emotional mercy with strength. But real strength is walking away with your power intact, knowing that silence hurts more than explanation ever could. Closure is for people who want mutual peace. Power is for those who understand. The greatest weapon is what you don't say. You don't need to shout. You don't need to block them. You don't even need to say goodbye. All you need is to leave the wound open. That's where the real leverage begins. In this part, we move deeper into Machiavelli's cruelest lesson: how silence, mystery, and unfinished emotional exchanges can hold people hostage, not physically, but psychologically. Because once you understand this, the mind will torment itself far better than you ever could. You realize something dangerous. You don't need revenge. You don't need them to suffer. You only need them to stay wondering. Unspoken endings become emotional addictions. Closure ends the story. But incomplete stories create obsession. The brain cannot leave an unresolved pattern alone. It loops, it replays, it spirals. That's why people revisit old messages, obsess over last texts, ask mutual friends what really happened, try to decode your silence like it's scripture. When you exit without warning, without clear reason, without emotional ceremony, you've weaponized ambiguity. Now they aren't just thinking about you, they're hooked. And here's the cruel twist. The longer they wait for closure, the more power you have. Because every minute they stay in emotional limbo, you become more unforgettable. You don't need to be present, you only need to be unfinished. One of Machiavelli's favorite ideas was control through absence. People think power comes from visibility, but real power comes from haunting. If you leave with no goodbye, while they still want more, in the middle of emotional intensity, you become an invisible presence in their life. They check your profile. They analyze your last message. They imagine conversations that never happened. You are gone, but louder than ever. And the key? You didn't give them anything neat. You left a trail of emotional knives on the floor, and now they walk barefoot, wondering which one they'll step on next. Closure creates equality. Withholding it establishes superiority. If you give closure, you bring the story to balance. I said what I had to say. You said what you needed. We're even. But if you're playing for power, you never want to be even. You want to leave while you still owe nothing and they owe everything. Their questions, their guilt, their emotional investment. That imbalance is your strength. It's what Machiavelli would call a silent leash. They keep thinking of you, not because you're speaking, but because they weren't allowed to speak. And when they think of you more than you think of them, that is psychological domination. Disappear at the peak, never at the plateau. Timing is everything. Most people leave when things die down, when emotions are dull, when both sides are tired of each other. But Machiavellian timing says, exit at the peak of their emotional attachment. Right after an intense argument, a passionate moment, a major confession, a sudden betrayal. You leave when the fire is roaring, not when it's embers. Why? Because now, they're left in emotional freefall. No landing, no explanation, no guide. They hit the ground with questions in their mouth and your silence in their head. And the mind will spend weeks, months, trying to make sense of it. That's how you become unforgettable. Not by being perfect, but by being unfinished. Never let them win the narrative. The moment you give closure, especially to someone who tried to hurt you, they rewrite the story. They say, we ended on good terms. I got my answers. I said what needed to be said. No, they don't get to close the book. They don't get to feel resolved. They don't get to walk away with clarity. They don't get to feel wise or dignified. That's your control. And once you give it up, they tell your story however they like. But if you leave first, if you leave mysteriously, if you leave while they're still processing, they never get to frame you. You become a ghost they can't explain, a villain they can't quite prove, a a legend they talk about, but never understand. And that kind of power, it outlives forgiveness. Use silence as psychological warfare. Silence isn't absence. Silence is a statement. And when you use it strategically, especially when they're reaching out, explaining, apologizing, or blaming, you win a war without drawing blood. Because your silence says, you're not worth a response. Your confusion is not my concern. Your pain is your own problem now. It turns the conversation from a two-player game into a one-man performance. They talk, they type, they confess, they wait. But your silence forces them to sit in their own chaos, without you to soothe it. Machiavelli would call this punishment without confrontation. And it works every time. Because people don't fear being yelled at. They fear being ignored by someone they still care about. Keep the door half open, just enough to make them hope. Here's the final twist. You don't slam the door shut. You leave it just slightly open. You don't say, "We're done. Goodbye forever. Don't contact me again." You say nothing, or you say something strangely neutral. "Take care. Maybe one day. We'll see, now they're unsure. Is it over? Should I try again? Did I mess it up?" This is Machiavellian leverage at its finest. Because the moment someone hopes for closure, they are yours. They stay emotionally tied. They delay moving on. They postpone healing, waiting for something that may never come. And the truth is, it won't come. Because closure is the reward for equals. And you don't give rewards to those who try to shake your power. They say not giving closure is cruel, but that's a lie told by the weak, the ones who need everything tied in a neat little bow so they can sleep peacefully. You don't sleep peacefully. You rule silently. And while they stay awake at 3 a.m., refreshing, rereading, regretting, you've already moved on. Quiet, untouched, and still inside their mind.